What's going on, guys? It's the Five Out Pass podcast, bringing you the Euro 2021 coverage. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. We'll be talking about Group E in this one. We just covered Group D in the last video, and we think obviously England and Czech Republic will be going through. Group D is a real, if there's a group of death, this is the group of boring. Just very average games, very few goals. That's one, two, three, like 5, 6 goals in the whole thing. The most exciting thing there was Lewandowski against Spain. I thought he had a great performance. Now I think the biggest talking point in this is potentially so Spain play Sweden, Slovakia, and Sweden play Poland. Now Spain remind me of the Spain of the early 2000s, but with better players. Do you remember the early 2000s with the early days of Iker Casillas? They got kicked out of the World Cup. They lost in the Olympics to Cameroon as well, if I'm not wrong. It was Cameroon. Just a very meh side, very very kind of limp. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
It's hard to disagree with that.
yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. It's a little in between generations at the moment. Like Ramos is not around. There's no Real Madrid players.
Yeah.
Interestingly,
Mm-hmm.
but you get that feeling it's kind of in between generations, and those leaders haven't really come forward. So even in that powerful Spain side 10 years ago, Mourinho was raising hell between the two clubs. And what happened was that Xavi and Iker Casillas basically said to each other, no matter what Mourinho does, you and I make sure we stay on the phone with each other and we'll talk and we'll sort everything out.
Yeah.
And that requires quite powerful
Mm-hmm.
leadership. It was almost like during the Cold War, the Americans and the Russians created this thing called the hotline, which was basically a direct line between the Russians and the Russian president and the American president that they could
Oh, is that right?
directly if there was anything that like they needed to feel like they needed to speak directly on. So Barcelona and Real Madrid had their own hotline between Casillas and Xavi because it was so inflamed.
I didn't know that. The Cold War thing is interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they what happened is that I think it was made just after the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think it was because of that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But I think that this team doesn't really seem to have leaders. You don't look through the team and go, these guys are the guys who are going to lift and inspire the squad. Skill-wise, I agree with you. They're all good players. What they're probably missing is a striker in form. Moreno's had a good season, but Luis Enrique is just trying to integrate him into the squad. Moreno, obviously, I think it was 30 goals in La Liga and inspired Villarreal to the Europa title. Morata's a bit up and down. He doesn't quite seem comfortable being the man. Didn't quite have it at Chelsea. Yeah. He had a good season at Juventus in his first spell. In this spell, he's played well, but he's been a bit overtaken by Cristiano, which is understandable. But just you question it. He's now 27. He's gone from being a player of promise to being at that level that he's probably going to be at for the rest of his career. So you wonder if he's quite the man. Yeah. You kind of want the guy who's the man to lift. Like if Lewandowski played for Spain, it'd be a completely different story. But Spain got to work with what they've got. And even the fact that they pulled Laporte in to the squad shows that they're just lacking just a little bit of extra quality because Laporte is actually French, but he's got Basque background, so he switched countries about it earlier this year actually. And so it was quite interesting in that regard. I just think the skill level of the players is not what I'm worried about. It's that ability and that hunger and that drive. You almost need Roy Keane to walk in there and give him a bit of a serve, like that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the Spain team here that played Poland. Yeah, you're right, man. It's a bunch of really good players sprinkled in a few kind of very young ones in Pedri. Then you have Jordi Alba, who's obviously should he be playing this tournament? Who knows? Then you have someone like a Koke from Atletico. I mean, it's all sorts of talent, but I think perhaps Luis Enrique, sorry, has license to fail in this tournament. But I think with the caveat, with the fact that they have to get through the group stage, I think it'd be a bit of embarrassment if they don't. But I think there is definitely a transition going. I mean, the fact that De Gea he's not getting a second of football, you'd think even if you wanted to rely on the kind of tried and true players, De Gea will get a time. And I think rightly so. He's not had a good 2 or 3 years, and he's lost his place because of that. I'm just looking now. I'm just thinking through some of the players that. Even some of the players they could think of bringing on, they're not, again, I'm just wondering when Thiago Alcantara will play or Ferran Torres, who both had decent seasons. Thiago Alcantara ended the season off really well. Ferran Torres has scored a fair few goals for City. I'm just wondering is this going to be a tournament for like an allowed failure for Spain? Do you think that's the point that I'm bringing up where it's okay they'll fail this time around because the World Cup will be next year, it'll be their tournament, or do you think it's too soon? Do you think that gap is too soon to be transitioned?
I think it's Luis Enrique's first tournament as a coach, if I know correctly, because they had the whole thing around 2018,
Yeah,
right? They sacked the manager right before the tournament, so it's
yeah.
his first major
Well,
tournament
just
as
to
a
pause
coach.
you there, just to pause you. He even took some time off because his daughter died, if you remember. So
That's
it's
right.
not
Yeah,
he hasn't even had the full amount of time. Sorry, continue.
it's a good point because the next World Cup is November next year. So what's that? What's that? 17 months.
80, yeah,
Yep,
17
they got to
months.
get
Yeah,
through the qualifiers, and Spain will make it through the qualifiers. So you'd think that it might
yeah.
be a gimme in the sense that a lot of it comes down to this game against Slovakia. That they'll still need to
Hmm.
get through the group stage. But if they got
Yeah,
as long as they don't get humiliated in the round of 16, say they lose on penalties, like you wouldn't you'd almost give him a freebie with the pretext they need to do something in Qatar.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm just looking as well here. So they play who's the what is the other round? So Poland. Now Lewandowski played well against played really well against Spain. I'm just wondering, do you think this at all exposes Lewandowski for being a great but not world class striker when he can't perform for a team like Poland, who's not a bad team, mind you? You know, but
The,
does this
the,
kind of expose a player like Lewandowski?
the reports I'm reading on the Poland team is that apart from Lewandowski, they're all quite average. Who are there other Polish players that are really standing? Because that my intel in Poland says there's a bunch of worker bees with a world class striker, almost like Sweden with Zlatan type of thing. That's kind of my read.
Yeah, and they have three or four Champions League level players. They have Chesney, Bednarak, and Lewandowski. The rest of them are very much workhorses. But my point being, does this kind of I just thought of bringing up the point because he has all these incredible stats about Bayern Munich this season. Greatest He's considered now the greatest ever Bundesliga striker, but he can't replicate it at any level on the international stage. I mean, is this a implication of his talent, or is it just because he doesn't have the players around him?
I think when you're used to playing with players of the standard of Bayern Munich, and then you have to go play with Poland players, there is an adjustment that needs to be
Hmm.
made. So he probably struggles
Hmm.
because he just doesn't have the ability to do that as
Yeah,
often between the two. That would be quite difficult.
yeah,
But he does do a lot of the dog work. Like his performance against Spain was sensational. Not just the goal, but the way he played the whole game. He clearly does different things with Poland, like dropping deep and being involved in the play more. That he doesn't really do at Bayern Munich. In Bayern Munich, his job is to score goals. Like if you took Harry Kane and say
and I
Harry Kane
completely
goes to City, he'd probably play a lot higher up the pitch. He doesn't have to drop deep as
yeah.
much. You know, it's just,
I
it is
completely agree with you. I
plays
just
around.
saw the tweets. I saw the tweets of like kind of 24 hours after the Spanish game. You know, just kind of saying he stats pads for Bayern Munich, but he's not that good, which I think is nonsense. I just wanted to hear what you thought about it. Let's just get a quick idea of who you think gets through this group. Do you think there'll be any surprises tonight?
Yeah, I think you got Sweden and Poland there. Sweden are top of the group, but they've scored one goal the entire tournament. So can
Poland
you?
has scored more goals than them.
Yeah, they just haven't conceded. The type of team that
Yeah,
might score against them is a team like Poland. So Poland have scored more
yeah.
goals than Sweden, but they've just conceded an awful lot.
Hmm.
So that
Hmm.
game might, funnily enough, it may not come down to Lewandowski. It may come down to Szczesny, who is the first choice. He's the guy who replaced Buffon at Juventus. He's not a bad keeper, Szczesny.
Yeah,
He's a good keeper, very good.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
that game's very interesting because I think if Poland win that game, they might actually go past Sweden on because I think when the teams are equal, they go on the head to head. So if Poland
Mm,
could
yeah, they do.
conceivably top the group, coming from bottom to top,
Yeah.
if the other result goes
Wow.
their
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Yeah.
but Poland will think they've got. I mean, if you've got a good goalkeeper and a good striker, I remember playing in Singapore like weekend football, and they're basically they there was a bunch of guys who were not particularly good, but they just like playing with each other. They decided they go get a goalkeeper and a striker, so they got me as the keeper, and then they got
Mm,
the striker was this big burly Czech fella who could just hold the ball up all day. and like the team actually became like 4 or 5 times better just because they fixed those two positions. Um,
Yeah.
I shouldn't talk myself up like that, but the point I'm trying to make is that the goalkeeper and the striker make a big difference, and Poland have a good keeper and a good striker. Slovakia, Spain's
Yeah. No, for me,
sorry, go on.
this group is very much anything can happen. Like, anything would every scenario would be a surprise. The only scenario that's not a surprise if Spain makes it through. Slovakia, Sweden, Poland. I don't know who's going to make it through, man. I could not tell you for the life of me.
Yeah.
And if Spain and let's say Spain and Slovakia don't make it through, and well, that's impossible. Oh no, wait, sorry, it is. What for whatever reason Poland make it through? I think it's going to be incredible turn out for whichever team, because this team plays the Netherlands Austria group. So hold on, yeah, play the Netherlands Austria group, which is not the hardest group to play against. If you come first in this group, you end up in Austria.
So you
This team can,
yeah.
this whoever comes second in this group can, sorry, whoever comes first in this group can go far.
10 Alaba, and you play David Alaba and 10 bitches hats. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. It's the same. It's the same. Alaba is in fact doing more for Austria than Lewandowski does for Poland. So it's going to be interesting. So, any closing thoughts on this group, Sham? Group E: Sweden, Slovakia, Spain, Poland, all with everything to lose, everything to win. It's going to be
like you
an
said,
immense
anything
few
can
games.
happen. Anything can happen here. I actually think Spain will win. Actually, I see it 1-0. I think they'll nick it. Slovakia have conceded. They're the only team in that group to have conceded in both games. So I think that they'll probably concede again. I think that's enough for Spain. Spain could find their mojo after that. Sometimes you just need to win a game to find your mojo. And they've had 2
Yeah,
draws.
we'll talk about Germany in a second. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I'm thinking it might be Slovakia that actually misses out, funnily enough.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This was the Group E analysis from the Euro 2021s. Any team can go through. We have Spain playing Slovakia, Poland playing Sweden. Bloody hell, Poland could even make the top of the group, but we'll have to see. So, if you like what we say, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are the 5-Yard Pass podcast. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. And as we say here, keep football simple. And as always,
Keep passing, guys. Cheers.